our wounded come first. They will be given priority. But we will care for the enemy wounded. And you will care for them if it's within your realm to do so. Fifthly, Marines do not attack medical personnel, facilities, or equipment. Marines do not attack medical facilities, personnel, or equipment. Marines destroy no more than the mission requires. You may have been listening on the radio about the air campaign. Great pain, great planning has gone into the targeting of all those missions to avoid damage to civilian areas, to avoid damage to religious areas, to avoid damaging those areas that they can use as propaganda against us. Does that mean there's no collateral damage? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means there is some collateral damage. But everything has been done for the targeting process to avoid that if possible. And you will do the same thing. When you sight on target, when you're accomplishing your mission. Marines treat all civilians humanly. Marines treat all civilians humanly. Marines do not steal. Marines respect private property and possessions. Marines respect private property and possessions. And lastly, do your best to prevent violations of the law of war. Report all violations of the law to your superiors, your judge advocate, your chaplain, inspector general, or provost marshal. That's the MP. Report it up your chain of command or to any one of these people that I've just mentioned. If you see anybody violating any of these laws, it's your duty to report that. Now let me just say something. Those are the basic laws. Why should we adhere to those laws? There's basically two reasons why you need to adhere to those. One is a legal reason. Pure and simple. If you violate any of these laws of warfare, you're violating UCMJ. If you violate the UCMJ, you're going to be held accountable for that. Pure and simple. It is a legal obligation that you have. If you violate the UCMJ, then you will be held accountable for that. To the degree that you violate that, to the same degree you will be punished for it. So if you think that when it really hits the fan, and out there in the fog of war, that anything goes, you're sadly mistaken. Because you will be held accountable for it, legally. The second reason why undergirds the very legal process that we adhere to. And that's the moral and ethical values that we live by. Listen to this. Every one of us has had instilled in us a belief system, irregardless of our faith background, irregardless of what part of the country we come from, or what kind of family we were raised in, or even if we were not raised in a family. We have been instilled with a certain belief system that undergirds the very legal system that we live by. And in this case, the military legal system that we live by. One of the laws I just read here says that Marines do not steal. They do not take what does not belong to them. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that law comes from? Somebody tell me. It comes from one of the Ten Commandments. One of the earliest moral and ethical beliefs, codes that we have to live by. All legal law, well, I should say all, but most fundamental legal law is based on ethical and moral belief system that comes from the Bible. It comes from our Judeo-Christian heritage. That's just one example. One of the laws. Do not steal. That's a legal obligation, but it's undergirded by a belief system that we should live by. Now, why do I say that? Because in 1968, Vietnam. Do we have any Vietnam vets here? Okay. Okay. Were you in the Marine Corps then?
I was there.
Huh?
I was there.
You was there? How many of you guys, I know he's heard about it, how many of you guys heard about the My Lai massacre? All right? Some of you young guys that probably weren't even born yet, let me tell you about the My Lai massacre. Lieutenant William Calley and his platoon went into the village of My Lai. They collected all the civilians there, collected them, herded them into a ditch, and assassinated, murdered all of them. I forget the number, but it was over 100. Women and children, murdered them. Why did they do that? Because of the horrors of war. They've been pushed beyond what they thought were their limits. They thought that they could fight the war the way the NVA, the Viet Cong have been fighting it. Some say they were justified in doing that. Bottom line is that they weren't justified, and they were brought to account for that. There was a study that was done by the Army Chaplain Corps as a result of that massacre. It was found that even though the whole platoon participated in the herding up of those civilians, not everyone in that platoon pulled the trigger and massacred. And when they found out why some did not pull the trigger, they found one common denominator. And those that were able to resist morally and ethically the temptation to do what they knew was wrong, legally, and in a violation of their own belief system. The common denominator was this. They found that there were those soldiers who had the strength, the courage, the perseverance to not do what their peers were doing, to not do what maybe they felt like doing, because they felt like doing it to some degree. What prevented them from doing it was that strong belief that they had that it was wrong, ethically and morally. And that was undergirded by their participation in strengthening that belief system. They found that they were capital attenders, and I'm not trying to make a pitch to come to Captain Spitline services here. I really am not. I'm just giving you facts. They found that those guys that did not pull the trigger were individuals that had their belief system strengthened in a time of war, when it seemed like everything goes and there's no parameters, that their belief system was undergirded and strengthened by attending capital services and seeing in the midst of war that there is a belief system that we live by. So let me tell you this, and I'm just going to close with this. If the UCMJ and your belief in the legal system that we live by here in the Marine Corps and the military as a whole is not enough to make you do the right thing, as Spike Lee says, then I hope your own belief system will help you do the
game. The answer is Phone Jeopardy, the game you play at home on your for everyone. You can play Phone Jeopardy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there are so many ways to win. Call and play for a $500
stuff, guys. There's going to come a point, perhaps, when the shit really hits the fan, that you're going to be tested to do the right thing. And you may say, screw the legal system, I don't care. I'm not worried about that. I'll take my chances. But I hope that you've got something stronger than that that's been undergirded. Because if you don't, then there's going to be a lot more that's going to happen to you than just the legal round. I've talked to a lot of Vietnam vets, and I've talked to a lot of them who are still dealing with the things that they did in that war, and they're still reaping now what they sowed back then, the mistakes that they made. So do it for yourself. Do it for the legal reasons, and do it for the right reasons, ethically, morally. On the back of this card, as I said, is the code of conduct. The last paragraph says this: I will never forget that I am an American fighting for freedom, responsible for my actions, and dedicated to the principles which made my country free. I will trust in my God and in the United States of America. That's what it takes. A belief system and a trust in a higher power that's going to get you through the horrors of war. If it's not the legal system, I hope that's what it takes. So it will help you do the right thing. That's all I've got to say, unless there's some questions that you want to ask. Any questions? Okay, Captain.